Yeah, it's 9 o'clock. We'll start our meeting. Everyone, thank you for joining this for our board and members of the public. This is our first time trying to use Zoom, and some joining by video, some by phone. So we ask for your patience in doing this, but it's probably going to be the new norm for our meetings and for a lot of our local government meetings as well. So first, I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we'll start with the quorum check. Roll call.
District 1, Supervisor Alejo.
Present.
District 2, Supervisor Phillips. District 3, Supervisor Lopez.
Yes.
District 4, Supervisor Parker.
Here.
District 5, Supervisor Adams.
She's here, but she's muted.
Okay. City of Carmel by the Sea.
Here.
City of Delray Oaks.
Here.
City of Gonzales.
Here.
City of Greenfield.
Here.
City of King City.
Here.
City of Marina.
Here.
City of Monterey.
Present.
City of Pacific Grove.
Here.
City of Salinas.
Here.
City of Sand City. City of Seaside.
Here.
City of Soledad.
Here.
Ambeg.
Here.
Caltrans District 5.
Here.
Monterey Bay Air Resources District.
Here.
Monterey Regional Airport District.
Here.
Monterey Salinas Transit. City of Watsonville. CSUMB. Chair, would you have a quorum?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're now going to do a Pledge of Allegiance through Zoom. So maybe if Salinas Councilmember Scott Davis could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
The United
United
States.
States of
America.
America.
And
Republic.
to the republic
which
stands
stands one
one
nation
nation
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for
liberty
all.
and justice for all.
Good job.
If I can add, is Josh Travis here on behalf of Supervisor Phillips.
Thank you, Josh. Okay, we're not going to go to public comments. Any person may address the Transportation Agency Board at this time. The presentation should not exceed 3 minutes and should be directed on an item not on today's agenda and should be within this Transportation Agency Board's jurisdiction. So if you got any members of the public who would like to make public comment, this is the time to do so. Seeing none or hearing none. Okay, well then we'll go to our item number 3, our consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull any items off the consent agenda? Or make comment?
I move to approve the consent agenda. This is Bruce Delgado.
Okay.
Mike Labar, second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Let's take
If I can interrupt for a second, did the chair go out to the public?
Yeah, I'm allowed to do that.
Okay.
Is there any members of the public who would like to pull or comment on any items on the consent agenda? Item number 3. Hearing none or seeing none, we will. We got a motion and a second. Although we're going to take a roll call vote as we're on video. Madam Clerk.
Okay. District 1, Supervisor Alejo.
Aye.
District 2, Supervisor Phillips.
Yes.
District 3, Supervisor Lopez.
Yes.
District 4, Supervisor Parker.
Aye.
District 5, Supervisor Adams.
Aye.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Aye.
City of Delray Oaks.
Aye.
City of Gonzales.
Aye.
City of Greenfield.
Aye.
City of King City.
Aye.
City of Marina.
Yes.
City of Monterey.
Yes.
City of Pacific Grove.
Aye.
City of Salinas.
Yes.
City of Sand City. City of Seaside.
Aye.
City of Soledad.
Aye.
Chair, quorum passed.
Thank you, everyone. For that, we're going to go to item number 4 now. This is the Fort Ord Regional Trail and Greenway FORTAG final environmental document. And we have, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. This is Stefania Castillo, Transportation Planner. I am very excited to present the final environmental impact report for the Fort Ord Regional Trail and Greenway project, also known as FORTAG. The proposed project analyzed in the report is an approximately 28-mile-long multi-use trail that roughly encircles the cities of Marina and Seaside and the Cal State Monterey Bay campus. And it also provides connections to the cities of Monterey, Delray Oaks, as well as the former Fort Ord and the existing Monterey Bay recreational trail. The goal of this project is to create a trail that is safe and accessible for people of all ages and abilities in order to provide a regional alternative to motorized travel between home, work, commercial, and recreational areas. Besides functioning as a walking and biking corridor, some segments of the trail will function as habitat corridors, providing opportunities for habitat restoration, as well as providing residents and visitors with some of the most breathtaking views from the former Fort Ord. While 7 segments were evaluated in the environmental document, this multi-jurisdictional trail is expected to be implemented in smaller phases as funding is secured for design and construction. The development, construction, and maintenance of the trail would be managed under a master agreement to be executed among and between the transportation agency and the underlying jurisdictions within whose boundaries the trail is located. TAMC was designated as the lead agency for environmental review through a multi-jurisdictional agreement and has led an extensive public outreach effort leading to this final report. The agency released a notice of preparation for the draft report on June 13 of 2019, and the agency held two scoping meetings and staff worked directly with the underlying jurisdictions and the public to gather input to define the alternatives in the report. The outreach efforts were covered by the media and the meetings were well attended. The full draft environmental impact report was released for public review on November 7, 2019, and the public comment period closed on January 3, 2020, providing an extended comment period beyond the required 45 days. A public hearing to accept comments on the draft report was held on December 4th, 2019 at the Transportation Agency Board of Directors meeting, and 2 public meetings to accept comments on the draft report were held on December 12th of 2019. Agency staff made additional presentations prior to the close of the public comment at each of the decision-making bodies of the underlying jurisdictions to provide a project update on the proposed master agreement and the mitigation measures. The majority of the comments received on the draft report addressed the proposed alignment through the Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District's Frog Pond property. Several alternatives were considered in the draft report, and a new alternative was added to the final report to avoid impacts in this area. All impacts identified in the final report for the proposed project are considered less than significant with mitigation, and none of the alternatives identified in the final report will result in any changes to the significance determination for the impacts identified for the proposed project. Key to the approval to agency and the underlying jurisdictions to cooperate in the design, construction, and operation of the trail. Essentially, the transportation agency is committing to finding funding for the various segments, as well as undertaking the lion's share of the work for the design and the construction, while the underlying jurisdictions commit to following the mitigation measures adopted by the Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Plan, and to be responsible for the ownership, the maintenance, and the operation of the trail once it is built. Because the trail is expected to take some time to design and build, and because not all of the funding for that work has been found, the master agreement provides that the transportation agency and the applicable underlying jurisdictions will enter into supplemental agreements as phases of the trail find funding. These supplemental agreements will provide greater detail and additional opportunity for public review in terms of final designs and the manner in which the parties will comply with the covenants of the master agreement for that particular segment or phase. The first supplemental agreement contemplated is one for phase 1 of the Canyon Del Rey State Route 218 segment. And it is anticipated that the City of Del Rey Oaks, the Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District, and the City of Seaside and the Transportation Agency will enter into this supplemental agreement after their respective approvals of the master agreement. The Transportation Agency must submit a grant allocation request with the certified final environmental document attached to that request to the California Transportation Commission by April 27th of this year, or lose $11 million in grant funding for this phase 1. Phase 1 of the Canyon Del Rey segment includes the design and the construction of the proposed trail alignment through the City of Del Rey Oaks from Safeway to Del Rey Woods Elementary in the City of Seaside. A tunnel is proposed under Canyon Del Rey Boulevard between Del Rey Oaks City Hall and the existing staircase entrance to the Frog Pond. A 12-foot wide raised pathway would be constructed to connect trail users from the tunnel to Carlton Drive at an accessible grade. The trail would then extend northeast up Carlton Drive to Plumas Avenue. Along Carlton Drive, the trail would consist of a new 12-foot wide multi-use sidewalk with a 5-foot wide buffer on the west side of the road. And along Plumas Avenue, the trail would follow the existing PG&E easement up to Del Rey Woods Elementary in the City of Seaside. The tunnel landing and the raised pathway are the only project elements expected to be designed and constructed within the Frog Pond as part of phase 1. Final design, including public workshops for phase 1, is expected to begin in summer 2020, and construction is expected to begin in fall 2022. Funding for design and construction has not been identified for the remaining proposed trail alignment within the Frog Pond. It is expected that the Cal State Monterey Bay North and South Loop segments, the National Monument segment, and the North Marina segment would be funded prior to additional work in the Frog Pond area. Because approval of the proposed project through the master agreement and the request of phase 1 grant funds are contingent on the certification of the final environmental impact report, and because extensive public outreach was conducted by the lead agency, staff has 5 actions recommended for the board. The first one is to certify the final environmental impact report on the Fort-Ord Regional Trail and Greenway project. The second is to adopt the proposed mitigation monitoring and reporting plan. And the third one is to adopt appropriate findings in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act. Once the final document is certified, staff recommends that the board approve the proposed project and mitigation measures through the master agreement also at this meeting. Following certification of the final report and approval of the master agreement by the board of directors, the decision-making body of each underlying jurisdiction will then make their own environmental findings using the certified environmental document for those portions of the project through their jurisdictions, and they would also approve the mitigation measures through the master agreement. The supplemental agreement for phase 1 would come to the board once the transportation agency is closer to seeking allocation of grant funds already secured for construction. So today there are 5 actions, again, certifying the final environmental impact report, adoption of the mitigation monitoring reporting plan, adoption of the findings, and approval of the master agreement, and of course, authorizing the executive director to sign the master agreement. Thank you everyone for your attention. I am happy to answer questions, and we also have our wonderful team of Megan Jones with Rincon Consultants and Kate Giverson with Harris and Associates on the line to answer questions on the final report. Thank you.
All right, for board members, we're going to take questions from you first. If we could try to do this one by one, we're going to try just doing it by audio. So would anybody want to go first on questions?
Chair, Supervisor Parker has her hand raised for a question.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Supervisor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank everyone who's worked on this project. You're reading through the documents. It's really a lot of detail, as well as quite a vision have gone into this, and a lot of work doing the analysis. The only question I had in reading through it was why permeable pavement was not considered for more than just that section in the frog pond.
Mr. Chair, if I could answer.
Yes,
this is Rich Deal, project manager for FORTAG. So the permeable pavement is intended to allow water to, rainwater to glide through the pavement into the groundwater. So in locations where there's wetlands or where there's streams nearby, that water can flow into the groundwater where we want it. In those locations where it's up higher and it's dry, a more stable or a more permanent surface like asphalt is more appropriate. It's far more cost effective than the permeable pavement, and so it has less maintenance, and it should work better for the vast majority of that 30 miles. But in those areas, again, where we're close to a wetland or we want that water to soak into the groundwater quickly and not have accumulated runoff, we want to go ahead and spend that money to do the permeable pavement.
Okay, I think Supervisor Parker is done with your question. Thank you for that answer. Anyone else? I think you could lift your hand, use on Zoom here, and then we could call on you.
Chair, Mayor Delgado has his hand raised.
Mayor Delgado, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. My question is, how much work on the environmental documentation does each underlying jurisdiction need to do in the future? Stephanie talked about it at the end. I'm not quite, and I'm reading it here in front of me too, but I just want it to be clarified for my own use and anyone else's who might be confused. What are the steps necessary by each underlying jurisdiction in the future as far as environmental work?
Hi, Mayor Delgado, this is Stephanie Castillo. So the next steps would be for the underlying jurisdictions to use the certified document to make their own findings. So that is the more immediate steps. Following that, once we secure funding for design and construction, TAMC as well as the underlying jurisdictions will need to revisit the environmental document and make sure that it is up to date and it's still consistent, because it might take some years for us to find funding. So we just need to make sure that the document is still relevant, and if needed, if it's not relevant, we would need to do a supplemental to that environmental impact report.
Okay, so TAMC would always do the bulk of the environmental work, and then underlying jurisdictions would do a relatively minor amount of work when necessary.
This is Stephanie.
And Chair, Kay Ryman has her hand raised to provide a comment on this question.
Staff was going to answer first. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, in terms of mitigation measures actually accomplished, it will, of course, be dependent upon the particular phase or segment of FORTAG that goes forward. Some underlying jurisdictions may have more sensitive information, but it's contemplated that unless an underlying jurisdiction wants to do the construction, for example, TAMC will be doing that. And as you read the environmental review documents, the bulk of the mitigation relates to design and construction. Now, once construction is finished and ownership or maintenance responsibilities of the segment is turned over to the underlying property owner, there are, as identified in the environmental documents, some continuing environmental obligations such as trash pickup and some regulation that should be tailored to the particular segment. Some segments may be open 24 hours, some segments may not, but it will be the obligation of the underlying jurisdiction then to carry on, so that, you know, to the extent that property is within the city of Marina, FORTAG would require that, consistent with an agreed upon schedule, Marina would continue to pick up trash along the area. So that type of environmental responsibilities would be those of the underlying jurisdictions, but the bulk of the obligations and responsibilities are anticipated to be TAMC's. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And finally, would it be appropriate for me to look at this as a programmatic document before us today, and then when each phase comes into more consideration, there would be a project-specific environmental document to go along with it?
If I can jump in for a second, this is a project-specific document. What will happen, and we needed that for certainly the first phase funding that we're doing, but we've done this so that if nothing changes and if new information does not come forward, we do not need to do additional work. But as each supplemental agreement comes forward for approval, of course, CEQA requires that people review the documents, the certified EIR, and see whether or not they still have validity and do not need to be supplemented. So this is not programmatic. It is a project area or project specific environmental document, but it does allow certain options and more details will be refined. Staff has endeavored to prepare this document as detailed as possible so that we can avoid a lot of additional environmental work.
All right. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And Chair, Rich Deal has his hand raised to provide a comment.
Mr. Deal, thank you.
So this is Rich Deal. Hey, just to follow on with why we went with a project level EIR, and is that that kind of an EIR makes our grant applications more competitive, whereas a program level, it's not as competitive. So that's one of our main intents, is to capture money.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from board members? See none, then any members of the public? Okay, we'll bring this back to the board for consideration of a motion.
Mike Labar, motion to approve.
Excuse me, Chair, there's at least one member of the public. I see Kevin Dayton's hand being raised.
Supervisor, can you hear me?
Yes, there you go. Okay, let's go with members of the public and then we'll take a
Yes,
motion.
thank you. Kevin Dayton speaking as a resident of Monterey County. No affiliation as in my comments with any group or organization. I am a member of the Measure X Oversight Committee and the chair of the committee for the first 2 years. And the backers of FORTAG asked me to make a public comment here late yesterday because I had spoken at the Delray Oaks City Council meeting that you saw during the slide presentation, because I had heard and it was confirmed that there were people there who were objecting to the environmental impact report. And I want to give just a brief context of Measure X in 2016, when this came up, it was the 5th try to get a tax measure passed for transportation projects. And a coalition had to be formed of a wide variety of groups and organizations to get enough support to push it through. And FORTAG was probably one of the most controversial issues. I was involved with 2 taxpayer associations, and they were concerned about $40 million for this project. But in the end, everybody agreed that you had to build a coalition of different groups to put this together to make it work. And on the 5th try, it was successful. And I do want to make sure that the people who work so hard on FORTAG don't end up being undermined after it happens. So I encourage you to support this. I'll also give you a perspective I've developed since then, as I've been speaking for various groups in support of things such as the Joby Aviation manufacturing plant that's proposed and Campus Town. The FORTAG system dovetails very well with that, as people, suggest that they don't want those projects either. FORTAG gives an opportunity for people to travel to where they live and where they work without having to get on the road. And it's actually a very good argument to make to bring up FORTAG in supporting these projects. So on the wider picture, this system could end up being perhaps, for Measure X, the long-term legacy that really matters for it. So I encourage you to support the CIR and move the project forward.
Thank you, Mr. Jan. Any other members of the public? See, no, we'll go back to got a motion by King City Mayor Michael Ibarra.
I'm sorry, Chair.
I'm sorry, Chair.
It's Teresa Wright, TAMC
Okay.
Community Outreach Coordinator.
Yes.
We received a letter from Dr. Shaman Kenneth, and he sent this letter that I'd like to read. It's
Okay.
Dear TAMC Board members, I attach a letter of support for the FORTAG Trail that is under consideration at your TAMC Board meeting. It is a transformational project for the region, and I would like to provide the unequivocal and complete support of my colleagues and I at CSUMB and the College of Business. Thank you for the opportunity to support such a worthy project. And then he's attached a rather lengthy letter. I would like to read it into the record. It's dated February 28th, 2020. To TAMC board members, from Shaman Kamath, Dean, College of Business, CSUMB, FORTAG Trail. It is a pleasure and privilege for me to support the establishment of the FORTAG Trail and the Monterey Bay region. As a steward of Place University and responsible business school committed to a quintuple bottom line, people, ethics, equity, planet, and profit. My university and business school community colleagues and I believe that FORTAG will bring unique, transformational, and generational benefits to the Monterey Bay community. It is a transformational project and will put Monterey Bay in the forefront of being the leading ecotourism, eco-recreation, and wellness region in the country. As a regional trail network, FORTAG is designed to increase access to our local national areas, the largest of which is the Fort Ord National Monument, but also include the string of pearls along the Canyon del Rey. And in parentheses, he has Roberts Lake, Laguna Grande, Work Memorial Park, Frog Pond East and West, end parentheses. In addition, the trail is designed as a safe off-road transportation network for non-motorized travel. The spur trail out to Ryan Ranch, for example, will provide a safe vista-filled bicycle commuting route for the residents of Seaside, Marina, Delray Oaks, and the Monterey Bay to one of the major employment centers on the peninsula. It is a truly remarkable project with large positive impacts on the economy, community well-being, and cohesion and preservation of our beautiful environment. We are fortunate to have such a well-conceived project. Thank you for allowing my colleagues and I the opportunity to support this project. We look forward to your approving it and seeing the transformation of our region and community. Sincerely yours, Shaman J. Kamath, PhD, Dean, College of Business, CSU, Monterey Bay. That's it.
Mr. Chair, you're on mute.
I knew I was going to do that. Okay, back to the motion, Mayor LeBaron.
Mr. Chair, can you just make sure that there is no one else from the public? Just want to give them a chance to stop being shy.
Okay, any members of the public last comment on this, opportunity to make comment on this? Okay, hearing none. Let's go to the motion now. Motion by Mayor LeBaron. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Second.
Councilmember Davis. We're going to do roll call vote. Madam Clerk.
On the question,
Yes, Mr. Mayor Oglesby.
I'm gonna vote no against this because the city of Seaside sent in several requests for some changes to the underlying document, and none of them was included, particularly when we're talking about the covenants on and the master agreement, where it states that we wanted some changes where this trail does not go through one of our major developments, which is the campus town. We would have liked for it to have skirted around a little bit better, but right now, this master agreement doesn't allow us to do that. And so it jeopardized what we're trying to do in campus town. So at the council level, I don't see us supporting this and moving it forward in any shape or fashion. So I wanted to put that on the record. I don't know why staff was not able to include what I would call a minimum of change. Let me just read it to you guys. It's what we wanted to add to what section 4 of the covenants, B3, simply states, let me get it for you right here. Sorry about that, Chair. 3, incorporate the FORTAG project application to the underlying jurisdictions into planning and entitlement documents. That makes sense, but for us, we would like it to add or provide a reasonable modified alignment that connects segments across the development project. And what we're trying to do there is in certain areas, that trail needs to skirt one of our major projects. When that trail was designed, and I told you guys this about 4 years ago when I was sitting in for Ralph, when we voted for it, everybody was there. I was lucky that he was out that day, so I know what's going on, that this would be a problem. So when that trail was laid out, they knew they were laying it out on our surplus 2 area, and that it would skirt right in the middle of our major development. That parcel was laid out for development since 1991. And so for us not to be able to get this in the agreement that this trail goes around our major development is an issue. So I will be voting no, and then I'm sure the council will have issues with this going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, would staff like to address this, please?
And Chair, Board Member Davis also had his hand raised.
Does staff want to address Mayor Oglesby's comments first, and then we'll go to Councilmember Davis?
All right. Yeah, I'd like to ask the team to address this and see whether this is a change that we can take to the agreement or not. Kay, from a legal standpoint, are we allowed to provide flexibility in the alignment, recognizing that it may require additional environmental review subsequent?
Yeah, with respect, I believe that the master agreement already does. The master agreement does provide for amendments, including amendments to alignments. It does require additional environmental review. I'm trying to recall that particular exchange in terms of drafting the master agreement. I think that if the language that the mayor presented, if I recall correctly, the idea behind not being able to accept that language in the master agreement was the fact that the law requires us to have a finite and stable project description. And the alignment that is described and that was studied is that, and having something that says this alignment or something in the future simply does not comply with CEQA. But the master agreement does allow for amendments and changes so that as things progress, and I don't know where the different parties are in terms of either the mine town or other developments going forward, then certainly TAMC and the other underlying jurisdictions can start working on something shortly. I don't know where all of that is, but the agreement and the alignment can be amended. It needs to go through environmental analysis to see whether it might be covered under the existing EIR. And if not, we'll have to do some sort of addendum or supplemental. But agreements can always change. Alignments can always change. And there's nothing in the master agreement that prevents that, but we can't approve a project that is not well described.
Mr. Chair, it looks like Rich Deal would like to add to the explanation.
Hey, this is Rich Deal. The master agreement and the EIR cover the entire length of the trail, but the trail is split up into segments so that we can design and fund them in a way where we can maximize our Measure X money and leverage them. Right now, the only segment that's funded is segment 1 through Delray Oaks. And so because we have that funding, one of our next steps is to go into the design process for segment 1 through Delray Oaks and refine the actual trail alignment through each little piece through there. That has a supplemental agreement that goes with it that all the agencies will sign. And that supplemental agreement gives design approval authority to each agency. So it's a cooperative design process. Every segment will be treated this way. We don't have money for the segment up near Campus Town, and there's a lot of flexibility on how that trail gets treated. And in all of our discussions with city staff, we've all let them know that, look, the trail is something that's supposed to make your development better, and your development should make the trail better. So with that cooperative intent, we'll move forward into looking for funding, but we don't tie down the actual alignment and how it goes through that development until we get that funding. So we don't want our trail to inhibit what you're trying to do in Campus Town. And so that essentially that supplemental agreement is the vehicle that allows everyone to cooperatively work toward the correct alignment that works for everyone. So we're not trying to force an alignment on any agency. Each segment, and there's 7 or 8 of them, each segment will follow the same exact process. So by the time we're done with design, the city will be happy with the design and the alignment, TAMC will be happy with it, and that supplemental agreement will go to each individual council to be signed and approved and signed. So that's the process going forward. There's nothing in the master agreement that prevents us from adjusting the trail alignment through Campus Town, however the city sees fit. As a matter of fact, if the city doesn't want the trail to go through Campus Town, that adjustment can be made during the design process as well.
Chair, Mayor Oglesby and Executive Director Hale have their hands raised.
We'll go to, how about maybe go to Debbie first to add, and then that way Mayor Oglesby could respond to all staff comments.
All right, so I guess I have a question for staff. I just wanted to find out if we're able to accommodate the mayor's language and still approve the EIR and such.
I would say yes, we can easily accommodate that language in there. And
unfortunately, I would say no, because what what we are approving today is a project that's been described. To have language in the project that talks about a different route that has not been identified would unfortunately I think, make the document suspect. I'm wondering whether I don't have in my head all the information about that particular segment. Now, I know that the segment that was analyzed was the trail plus something like 100 feet or yards or something. It was a significant portion on either side. If the trail then gets within that boundaries, then when we come to a place where we want to do an agreement that approaches that segment, then you just look at the documents, we've examined it. If the change in alignment is a little different, then we may have to go out and do a supplemental EIR because we haven't studied that area. I don't know if the city has a specific design. I don't recall the city asking for a specific alignment to be evaluated in the EIR, but I don't know that we can agree to say this is the project or something that looks like it. I just don't know that the courts would accept that.
Chair, board members Oglesby and Davis have their hands raised.
Okay, we'll go to Mayor Oglesby and then Councilmember Davis.
You know, and generally I agree with everybody. Excuse me. I agree, and you know, I read the documents, so what you guys are saying here in the documents, I just wanted us to have the conversation, and I agree with the attorney where I want this document to be a strong document. I definitely support the trail, FORTAG trail, and I know the developer of Campus Town would love to have that trail integrated with the development. So that's not, so when we're talking about a modified alignment, we're not talking about moving away from the development parcel, so to speak, and I think it may be within that 150 feet. But as long as you're saying when we get to that phase, that segment, then the discussion about modifying the adjustment or the alignment is possible, will happen, then that's fine. I just didn't want to have this go through and then a year or 2 years from now, these objections will be raised. So if this does not bind us to the alignment in the document. And I agree with the attorney about we don't want this document to be suspect. I don't want to try to hold it up like that. So I wouldn't ask you guys to do anything, something like that. So I'm supportive. I just want to put my objections on the record, and I will support it. But you guys know my objection of when we come to that section, then Seaside will ensure that it doesn't delay our project. And again, I want to speak for the developer in the city of Seaside. We want the FORTAG trail to better the project and better the trail. We think that's a win-win for everybody. So I thank the chair.
Thank you, Mayor, and I thank you for raising those concerns for Seaside. Obviously, this project, if it's able to address the council's concerns, I think our board will certainly be open to addressing that in that supplemental agreement in the future. And we'll come back to that to address those at another meeting. And then we'll go to Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little bit confused, and it seems like there's some conflicting information coming from staff. It seems like Rich Deal says that the alignment can be changed, but then Ms. Ryman says, no, it can't. So I don't know if you guys could clarify a little bit more, but I share the concern that Mayor Oglesby brought up, and I'd hate to think that we are trying to shove something down a city's throat, so to speak, against his concerns and objections when our legal counsel says we can't change it, but yet Mr. Deal says that we can. So if get some more clarification on that.
If I may, Chair,
Yes.
the alignment can be changed. that's clear in the documents. Not only is there a specific provision regarding amendments to the agreement and amendments to the alignment, but there are powers and obligations that the underlying jurisdictions have and retain with regard to approval of plans and permits. And if they don't like something, it won't get permitted and it won't go forward. And probably we won't get funding for it. But the alignment that is going to be approved right now is going to be an alignment that is approved. It is a project. If you think about a development project, if you think about building houses or commercial developers, something like that, you can have an EIR for that, and then something happens and they want to change it. The EIR does not prevent that change. If people want to change things, and I think staff has made it very clear, and I hope that the documents also make it clear, this is a cooperative venture, and that if all the parties agree that, yes, the best way to promote Campus Town will be to move the alignment this way, you know, this will happen. The only question that I had, and that I think the mayor of Seaside understands and respects, is in the master agreement, you can't have language that says this is the alignment or something else that we haven't studied. So for right now, this will be the alignment. When things come up for further design and funding and processing, then we get together, then we refine it, then we adjust. And if that means that we have to take it out of what we've studied in the EIR, we take it out of what we've studied in the EIR and we do a supplemental. But it may not have to even come to that. So this is broad strokes for everybody. As I think we mentioned in the documented presentation, we're at a 30% design here. And certainly 30% with the most specific area, the phase one of the segment. So yes, adjustments can change, and I think TAMC has made it very clear that they want this to work with all the cities and underlying jurisdictions. It's just that for purposes of CEQA approval right now, you have to have a finite described project. Doesn't mean the project cannot change, and it doesn't mean that if and when the project changes, there are terrible things that happen.
Chair, both Rich Deal and Fred Watson have their hands raised.
Okay. Mr. Deal, and then Mr. Watson.
Thanks, this is Rich Deal. I wanted to add one clarifying note to the alignment that may make this issue a little simpler for Campus Town, and that is that in the current current environmental document, the alignment goes up to Campus Town but does not go through it. So the city of Seaside has full land use authority over the Campus Town development, and you can put that trail wherever you want. And so if the connection is not working out the way you want to, or if it does work out the way you want to, all that can be dealt with later. But essentially, Campus Town property does not have the FORTAG trail going through it right now.
Mr. Chair, I think you're on mute.
Is there other staff who wanted to comment on this? Mr. Watson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Fred Watson. I'm speaking as a member of the public, one of the co-founders of the FORTAG project. Yeah, I just essentially was going to say what Mr. Deal just said. FORTAG has a well-defined boundary in the documents that are before you today, the project that TAMC is pursuing. And then there's the broader idea of FORTAG that a lot of people have embraced and that we've extended to any area where there's current interest in reuse of the Fort, such as Campus Town. So it's essentially to echo what Rich just said, the current TAMC project that's before you today does not go through Campus Town. The broader idea of FORTAG does go through Campus Town, or it has, we've had a lot of discussion with the city, with a lot of support from the city on the idea of how it might go through Campus Town as part of the Campus Town project, but that is not part of the project that's before TAMC. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on this? Board members or members of the public?
Let me go, Chair,
Okay.
real quickly. Again, I just want to establish for this board our concept of how that interacts with Campus Town. So now it's on the record about our understanding, and then that's fine enough for me. So thank you.
Okay. We have a motion, Mayor LeBaire, and is there a second?
Delgado will second that if it hasn't been seconded already.
By Mayor Delgado. Okay, now we're ready for a vote.
Chair, I just had some brief comment.
Okay.
I might. Most of us know, but I want to make sure that it's on the record, what an incredible effort over the last several years. Two people, Scott Waltz and Fred Watson, who we've heard from today, have made. I think it's an unprecedented volunteer effort at a level that is so comprehensive that you would think that staff had worked on it for several years. And I think that staff appreciates all the upfront work from Fred and Scott and their relentless ability to meet with all stakeholders to iron out any objections to make everybody happy. I just haven't seen one or two or more people produce a volunteer proposal like this, the level of detail and quality they have. And so I just thought that it's appropriate before we approve this, if we are going to approve this, to thank Fred and Scott for something that I think is unprecedented in Monterey County. So thank you, Fred and Scott, and anyone else who had a hand in helping you bring this to us today.
Thank you for those comments, Mayor, and to our community members who did all that tremendous work on this project. Anyone else? Okay, we're gonna, Madam Clerk, we do the roll call, please. Vote.
District 1, Supervisor Alejo.
Aye.
District 2, Supervisor Phillips.
I think people are on mute. I think Mike Zeller should unmute people.
Aye.
District 3, Supervisor Lopez.
Yes.
District 4, Supervisor Parker.
Aye.
District 5, Supervisor Adams.
Aye.
City of Carmel by the Sea. City of Carmel by the Sea.
Aye.
City of Delray Oaks.
Aye.
City of Gonzales.
Aye.
City of Greenfield.
Aye.
City of King City.
Aye.
City of Marina.
Yes.
City of Monterey.
Happily, yes.
City of Pacific Grove.
Aye.
City of Salinas.
Yes.
City of Sand City. City of Seaside.
Aye.
City of Soledad.
Aye.
Chair, motion passes on a 16-1 with City of Sand City Hawthorne absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Appreciate that. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to item number 5 now. This is our programming guidelines and competitive grants. And we have staff.
Mike Zeller.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. I'm Mike Zeller. I'm a principal planner with the Transportation Agency. So today I will be presenting on the 2020 programming guidelines and competitive grants. So what I have up on the screen is just the recommended actions for today that staff will be asking the board to take at the close of the presentation, but just wanted to give a bit of a background on the Regional Surface Transportation Program funds. These are federal funds that the state exchanges with local with state funding. So the Caltrans takes the federal funds and exchanges it with an equivalent amount of state cash so that there's less restrictions on the use of the funds. And then those funds are apportioned to regional transportation planning agencies so that they can be used on a variety of different transportation projects. These are very flexible dollars. It's one of the more flexible sources of fundings that we have that can be used on highway, local roads, transit, bike and ped type of projects. And we essentially treat, once the funding comes to the transportation agency, we essentially treat it as local dollars. TAMC typically receives a share of just over $4 million annually of regional surface transportation program funds. And the fund estimate for this next 3-year cycle that's covering fiscal years 2020, 2021, and 2022, we're estimating $4.8 million annually for a 3-year total fund estimate of $14.4 million. The transportation agency distributes these funds in 3 different programs, and this is laid out in the guidelines that were included with the staff report. The 3 different programs, the first is the reserve, then there's the fair share, and the competitive programs. For the reserve, that's 10% that's set aside for TAMC projects like our traffic counts and our Safe Streets program. So for this next 3-year cycle, the 10% set aside would be an estimated of $1.4 million. The fair share, this is the portion that is distributed to local jurisdictions based on population and lane miles. And this is capped at $3.6 million for the 3 years. Jurisdictions can program these funds at their own discretion for their local transportation projects by essentially just submitting a letter to the transportation agency so that we can verify the eligibility of the project. Then the board typically approves these programming requests on the consent agenda, and then the jurisdictions receive the funding on a reimbursement basis. The third program is the competitive pot. And so for this, the fund estimate assumes that the balance of the regional surface transportation program funds of $9.36 million would be used for the competitive, and we would also combine $750,000 of Transportation Development Act 2%. These are funds that are designated just for bike and pedestrian projects. And then we would also combine this with unused competitive funds from the prior 2017 cycle, which is estimated right now at about $2.1 million for a total competitive pot of $12.2 million. We are currently working with the cities that have unused competitive funds from the last cycles to submit any reimbursements that they may have, and we'll bring a final total to the board in August. So jurisdictions, if they do have outstanding reimbursements, have some time to get that submitted, but we do want to try to stick to the 3-year timely use of funds provision that's in the programming guidelines. The competitive program is focused on, and you can see the scoring criteria in the staff report for the applications, but it's focused on projects that can obviously be completed in the 3-year cycle, and projects that score well in the competitive application would be ones that are near or ready for construction and have complete streets components, such as bicycle and pedestrian components, roundabouts, and different safety improvements. The scoring criteria and the fund estimate were reviewed and supported by the TAMC's Technical Advisory Committee, which each jurisdiction has a representative on. And we're proposing that the call for projects would be today with board support and approval, with applications for the competitive pot due on June 1st. We would convene a review committee of transportation agency staff, as well as technical advisory committee and bicycle and pedestrian committee members to review and score the applications. And then, as I mentioned, we would bring a final proposal back to the board in August. And that would start off the next 3-year cycle. Also, part of this is we do have a master funding agreement that goes along with the Regional Surface Transportation Program that will need to be updated with each of the jurisdictions. So it'll be a new 3-year funding agreement just specific for this cycle. We'll bring that to the board in April for consideration of approval, and then we can take that out to the jurisdictions for their approval after that. And with that, Chair, I'd like to request board consideration of the three programming actions that we have up on the screen. The first is to approve the programming of the 3 years of fair share formula regional surface transportation funds to the cities and the county, approve setting aside 10% of the funds for the TAMC Reserve for Complete Streets, and approve the updated guidelines and application and release a call for projects for the Competitive Transportation Development Act and Regional Surface Transportation Program funds.
Thank you for the presentation. Let's go to board member questions.
Supervisor, this is Chris. I've got my hand raised there on the screen.
Sorry, with Supervisor Lopez. Yeah.
Thank you. I had a question. If we could quickly look at the slide. My question is that line 2, the complete streets portion. Can you go in a little further in depth on what that means? Because my concern is for communities that might be competing for those who are just getting started. Are they then at a disadvantage on that 10%?
So the 10% is generally used for transportation agency related projects. So we use this funding for our traffic counts program. We also put funding towards our new Safe Streets program. We've put money towards speed signs on Highway 156. So this is essentially for when there's different projects that come up that we maybe don't have other sources of funding for. Transportation agency staff is able to program these funds towards those projects. As I mentioned with the Safe Streets program, this is one where if a city or jurisdiction already has a roadway project that's going in, we've been able to use some additional funding to help them put in different treatments like bike lanes and things like that. And Chair, Executive Director Hale also has her hand raised right now.
Okay, there's a question about that complete streets portion that you brought up, so if we could address that.
Yes, Board Member Lopez, I just wanted to point out that, for instance, when Soledad did its paving of Metz Road, the TAMC Board authorized money from the Complete Streets program to be used to help them construct an offset crosswalk to access the elementary school there. So that's the type of thing that funding has been used for. As these needs come up, but they're unexpected, we've been able to help out various cities, primarily the smaller ones, with some additional funding. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything else, Supervisor Lopez?
That's it for me.
Okay. Other questions, other board members? Okay, we'll go to then members of the public. Any members of the public would like to speak on this item? Agenda item number 5. Okay, see none, we'll bring this back then for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve of the staff report, item number 5.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, second by Supervisor Parker. We'll go to roll call vote, Madam Clerk. Thank you.
District 1, Supervisor Alejo.
Aye.
District 2, Supervisor Phillips.
Aye.
District 3, Supervisor Lopez.
Aye.
District 4, Supervisor Parker.
Aye.
District 5, Supervisor Adams.
Aye.
City of Carmel by the Sea. City of Carmel by the Sea.
Aye.
City of Del Rey Oaks.
Aye.
City of Gonzales.
Aye.
City of Greenfield.
Aye.
City of King City.
Aye.
City of Marina.
Yes, and thank you to staff for their work on this.
City of Monterey.
Aye.
City of Pacific Road.
Aye.
City of Salinas.
Aye.
City of Sand City. City of Seaside.
Aye.
City of Soledad.
Aye.
Chair, motion passes 16-1 with Greg Hawthorne being absent.
Thank you for that. We will now move to item number 6. This is receiving reports from our transportation providers. We'll start with Caltrans.
Good morning, everyone. And I'd like to just start by thanking TAMC staff for putting this venue together. I think this is a great adaptation, something I'm sure we'll see more of, but we really appreciate the opportunity to keep business moving, rolling, and I wish everyone safe, good, safe, and health for you and all your employees, your families. The director of Caltrans is also working, all of the leadership at Caltrans is working very hard to keep essential services open. The California Department of Transportation, as you know, absolutely provides an essential service. And we're prioritizing the movement of freight, and we're also keeping everything else kind of running along. Our project delivery teams and much of our staff are teleworking. We're working to get more equipment for people to be able to keep things on track. Construction contracts are full, carrying on underway. Our maintenance crews are out there keeping the roads open, and working hard to keep all of our staff as safe and secure as possible. So I just wanted to let you know that we're open for business, and we're carrying on in all the best ways that we can. And I also would like to mention that we got some good news yesterday that Caltrans is being invited to submit a nomination for a build grant for the Castroville Boulevard interchange. So we'll be working closely with your staff to get that put together, and hopefully we'll have some good news there. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions for Caltrans, anybody? See none, we're going to move on. Thank you for that report and for that good news on the interchange. Going to Monterey Peninsula Airport now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak for the airport district. I have some extended comments, not only for the board, but for members of the public that may be listening. The Monterey Regional Airport is open and it's operating, and commercial airports are classified as an essential service by both the county and the state, as well as the FAA. The airport district is committed to serving passengers safely as long as the airlines continue to operate. We have a full staff working at the airport, and none have contracted the virus. We are working every day to make sure the terminal is disinfected and all hard surfaces are wiped down regularly to protect our passengers and employees. We have acquired a disinfectant fogging device so that the public areas of the airport are disinfected regularly. And as a courtesy, we are providing outbound passengers with sanitary wipes to clean their seats after they board. Nationally and in California, airports, all airports are experiencing a 70 to 80% reduction in boardings. We are no different. All Monterey airlines, except for Allegiant, are still flying a full schedule while experiencing some flight cancellations. We do expect some schedule frequency adjustments by American and United on April 1st, but they will continue to operate on a limited basis. United and American are still providing East Coast travel through Los Angeles, Dallas, Denver, and Phoenix. TSA is still providing passenger screening for all flights. Unlike San Jose, however, TSA at Monterey has not reported any virus cases. Ground access to the airport via taxi, Uber, and Lyft is still available, and there's still lots of available parking. Rental car companies are all operating. Needless to say, there are rental car available. Food service for outbound passengers is still available to our passengers on the boarding side. However, like many restaurants in the state, the main dining room and bar at Golden Tee are closed. We are a self-funded enterprise, so this massive reduction in passenger employments has a major financial implication for us. Fortunately, we have created substantial cash reserves, and federal assistance is included in the current recently passed stimulus bill. Sheltering in place is still the order of the day for all of us. However, if you must travel, Monterey Airport should be your first choice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I agree with that. Thank you. Moving to MST, Mr. Sidor.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks TAMC staff for hosting this meeting in this format. MST has been considered an essential service, and we are continuing to provide our services with some schedule modifications. We've discontinued services to San Jose, and we will be suspending other services later this week, moving to a Saturday schedule. Our ridership, like reported by Mr. Sabo, has dropped approximately 80% in the past week. We've been closely monitoring our ridership patterns for those people that are continuing to travel for essential needs, to go shopping, to go to medical appointments. And we are ensuring that we have no more than 10 persons on a bus. We're monitoring that as well. When we see additional folks on a bus, we will send a second bus to thin the loads out. That hasn't been much of a problem, I have to say. Our coach operators and mechanics and professional staff have been showing up to work. We have offered those who are over age 65, per the governor's order, the ability to shelter in place. We are implementing the new leave requirements for our employees so that they can take care of loved ones who may be ill due to the virus. I'm not aware of any yet, but there are some HIPAA regulations that keep us aware. So the good news is people are sheltering in place. They're not riding unnecessarily on transit. We are monitoring the federal bill that came out this morning that provides about $26 billion to transit through both the urban formula, which we participate in, and also a rural formula, which we participate in as well. So we should see some relief. However, those federal programs during ARA, it took 4 months for MST to receive our money. So I don't expect anything different here. We are lobbying the state through our transit association to get some immediate relief. My goal is to try not to lay off any drivers or lay off as few as possible. And we are, continuing to use excess drivers at this point. We're working with the Food Bank of Monterey County and Meals on Wheels to use our vehicles and our drivers to help distribute food. We're trying to find ways to keep them busy because, unfortunately, I don't mean to be any more of a downer than things already are. Mother Nature doesn't care that there's a pandemic, so we could still have an earthquake or a flood or a fire or some other emergency that transit will have to respond to. So my goal is to keep my drivers ready and available to go should something else happen. We're here and continuing to provide necessary medical trips to dialysis for our rides passengers and people with severe disabilities so they can continue to live their lives as well. So more to come. It's changing rapidly. There'll be some service adjustments, changes, probably being announced later today. Again, given the passenger loads, we should be able to carry those with no problem. That concludes my report.
Mr. Sidoric, did you mention that currently the rides will be fare-free but not carefree, right?
Thank you for reminding me of that. Yes, in order, given the impact on the local economy and the number of our passengers who are hospitality workers who are not working now, we have made our fares free on all of our services. Every little bit helps, and we're only boarding through the back door. of each bus. I've eliminated all of the front door loading buses only out of our large bus fleet, and replaced those out of our contingency fleet. And we've also provided some tape, and we're taping off the front section of the bus for those persons with disabilities and the elderly are still able to board through the front, and we've taped off that section to provide them a little distance from everyone else as they may be more vulnerable. And that also provides some space for our drivers as well. So that's been received really well by our drivers. It seems to be received well by the community. We're also going to be placing little sidewalk adhesives at our transit center as soon as they come in that will give people some, let's show them what 6 feet apart looks like. So they can gather waiting for the bus, and they can gather at these little feet print that we're putting down on the sidewalk. And those should be arriving shortly.
Thank you for that. Moving on to the Air Resources District.
Excuse me? Thank you, Ms.
Question by Supervisor Adams.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you for the really good report, Carl. The question I wanted to ask, if you could expand a little bit more, I believe you said that you were working with the food bank to help with the delivery of food. Is that correct, or did I miss that? And can you expand on that?
We are in contact with them. We saw the news report that indicated that they were having a problem making deliveries. We saw that they had some National Guard coming in and helping out. I've got vehicles that are not needed. I've got drivers who are standing by looking to work. So we have reached out to them, and we are coordinating at this place. We haven't, at this point, we haven't implemented, but we're talking. We have the resources available today, as long as my drivers are still reporting to work and they're healthy. So we'll do what we can do, but we haven't made our first delivery yet, but we're looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, and the reach out to them too. Thank you.
Okay. There's no other questions. We'll go to the Air Resources District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Like most of the other entities on this conference call, we remain open with the majority of our staff at home. Last week we had to cancel our board meeting, so we're going to be a little bit behind on establishing some of our grant programs, namely AB 2766, which is funded by the DMV for mobile source emission reductions. So we'll be getting that going next month. I also wanted to mention that our Carl Moyer grant program is currently accepting applications, and staff is at home processing those applications. And one more reminder that we still have monies available in our EVIP program. That's the incentive program for electric vehicles throughout Monterey, Santa Cruz, and San Benito counties. And we'll be working right now with our National Association on a lot of things are happening at EPA even during this crisis. There's a new rule proposed by EPA. It's called Transparency in Science. And it's especially problematic from a transparency and science perspective. So if folks are not aware of that, I encourage you to look that up and get educated on what's happening there. But EPA seems to be moving very quickly right now on a number of their rules. So with that, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Stedman. Any questions from any board members or members of the public for our transportation providers? Seeing none, thank you everyone for your reports. We're going to go to item number 7 now, reports on meetings attended by board members at agency expense. Is there any of those today? Okay, seeing none, we're going to Executive Director's report. Ms. Hale.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So TAMC staff has been out of the office since a week ago, Monday. We used last week a little bit for people to pick up things. We've loaned out our laptops to a couple of staff members that didn't have computers at home. We only have one staff member going into the office because we can't keep him out, but it has been helpful in order to do things to pick up the mail and such. And we've been having our weekly staff meeting on Zoom. And so that's why the staff, most of them know how to post their picture when the video's off, and they know how to do a background shot. And Mike Zeller has been gracious enough to do a tutorial PowerPoint that many of you saw, and we're sharing that as well as I did a PowerPoint on how to do the background. We're sharing those with our special district partners or anyone else who is interested. I think given the fact that many of you serve on different boards, it's helpful if we're all on a same or similar platform. And so it's possible that Zoom will become the platform of choice just to minimize everybody's learning curve. So thanks to all of you who were able to tune in and come to the training. And we'll go ahead and resend out those PowerPoints so that you can play around with some of the nice features. Our beginning of April, so next week is normally our committee meetings. We will only be holding the executive committee. That'll be meeting on April 1st. Coincidentally, but we didn't really have sufficient items, and given the Zoom meeting challenge, thought we would go ahead and cancel our technical advisory committee, our bike and pedestrian committee, and our rail policy committee for April. They will very likely be back in May so that we can continue to proceed with business. As always, your Form 700s are due to TAMC. You can send it to info@tamcmonterey.org, and our staff will go ahead and put those into the file. If you need a tutorial on how to sign things remotely on an iPhone or an iPad, I've got one of those. Just let me know. Maybe we'll start posting some of these on the TAMC website, but it's not too terribly hard, and it's not too hard to do your Form 700 remotely. So just a reminder to send that into TAMC. If anybody has any Zoom meeting debriefs, please be sure to send them to me or to Mike Zeller so that we can help you out for the next time. Otherwise, just encourage everybody to stay safe with your social distancing and hand washing, and yet stay remotely connected so we can see each other's faces and survive the social disconnect that sometimes happens in this type of quarantine situation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. And I just, as Chair, I just wanted to personally thank our staff for making the best out of a tough situation here, and certainly all our city and county government staff. We acknowledge them for allowing us to do the people's work, but also continue to serve the community as best we can under the circumstances. And so just wanted to quickly say prayers for all our community members who are sick, and we've had one fatality so far from this virus. But I just want to say from our behalf of our board, just best thoughts for our community members, and again, reiterating, encouraging people to stay home and keep people safe by doing so. With that, we're going to just go to any announcements or comments from agency members on matters they wish to put on future transportation agency agendas. See none, I think then we can move to item number 10 and adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone. We'll have our meeting, executive meeting next week, and then our next board meeting next month also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Stay
job, everyone.
safe.